What's up guys, welcome back to the channel where I teach you everything you need to know about accounting, audit, personal finance, the CPA lifestyle, and everything in between. If that sounds awesome to you, make sure to hit that subscribe button below and welcome to the accounting channel. I officially started a series on this channel where I'm going to teach you how to audit. As part of the process to teach you how to audit, I'm going to be going over different account balances that the majority of companies have and how to review the account balances and how to test them. To kick this off, we're going to go over my favorite account balance to test and also the king, cash. Cash is a section that is usually assigned to level 1 associates. Even if you don't get assigned the cash section to test, it is really critical to your career and overall professional development to understand and know how a bank reconciliation works and how to test it. I can guarantee you that any company that you go to audit is gonna have some type of cash balance. So it is really critical for you to know and understand how a bank reconciliation actually works. My goal on this channel is to help build a full audit library of different account balances that when you're at work or when you're testing a certain account balance, you can come back to. And hopefully with these audit videos, you can actually learn what goes into an actual financial audit and how to test different account balances. In this video, I will go into how to review a bank reconciliation and how to set up your work paper to begin testing. The actual test work that we're going to be doing over the bank reconciliation is going to come in part 2 of this video. So now, I know you guys are all super eager. Let's now review our client's bank reconciliation. All right, guys, we now have our client's bank reconciliation here. As you get any type of document you get from your client, you're gonna wanna do a few things right when you get it. So obviously, you know, we have a bank reconciliation here. That's what we're gonna be reviewing because that's a section that we were assigned in our audit. The number one thing, and we're gonna go over a few steps that you need to do when you receive a work paper from your client. It doesn't matter what account balance you're testing. There's really 2 things that you need to cover in the first 2 steps of this video. The first step you need to do when you receive a work paper, you need to format it correctly. Okay, I am like a huge person on making sure that work papers are as aesthetically pleasing as possible. Yes, I know I'm into fashion a little bit, I know, but even my work papers need to look pristine and so do yours. So I always say, so to change the font on the whole thing, you're gonna hit Control A two times. So again, Control A. And what you're going to do, you're going to hit Alt-H, FF. That's going to give you control over the font. Every firm is different on how they're going to want you to format your work papers. I personally like Calibri 10. That is my opinion. I like it that way. I think it looks really, aesthetic that way. So let's do Calibri. Then we're going to do Alt-H, FF again, Tab. So again, for you guys, Alt-H, FF gives you control of the font. That's a shortcut for the font. And you hit Tab. It's going to go to the size 10. Beautiful. Look at that. You see that? That's how you know we're looking good. So the first thing you want to do, you want to format your work paper. A lot of times you'll get something from a client and it looks absolutely terrible because they don't care about formatting. So I just like making sure that everything's the same font that I want. The zoom, for purposes of this example, I'm using 150 because obviously I want you guys to be able to see what I'm doing. But if in any other case, so the zoom shortcut, Alt-WQ tab, if you do 100 should be just fine for your work papers. Because the thing when you do a work paper is that you want to make sure when whoever's going to review your work, when they open the work paper, you want them to be able to have a clear picture of everything that's going on. And I think Calibri 10, Zoom 90 or 100, I think would work just fine. Again, of this example, I want you guys to be able to see exactly what I'm doing. So let's make that even bigger, 160. All right, perfect. All right, so obviously we're not done formatting this work paper. The first thing we touched on is the font. All your work papers, you're gonna wanna label them properly. Again, every firm has their own kind of preference on how they structure and how they format their work papers. I personally, for example, always, the top 3 things on the left-hand corner are going to be the company. Obviously, the first thing we're going to be doing is auditing our company's CPA swag. So that's going to be the first thing on the left-hand corner. The second thing is going to be what we're testing. So obviously, we're going to be doing a bank reconciliation test work here. So it's going to be bank reconciliation. And typically, we add the fiscal year end of the year we're auditing. So let's say we were doing a review over the first quarter. We would do 3/31/2022. And then to fix that date, you put apostrophe on that, and that should fix it. But let's go back to the way it was. Control Z. So it's 12/31/2022. So always, guys, okay? I cannot stress this enough. Formatting your work papers is so critical because it lets the reviewer know exactly what you're doing and what's going on. So obviously, this company is CPA Swag. We're going to be doing our bank reconciliation in this work paper. for the fiscal year end 12/31/2022. The second thing we want to do is we want to put our materiality on the top right hand corner. I typically like doing this in all my work papers. It reminds me and lets me know exactly what my materiality is. Typically when you're going through your audit, you'll kind of start memorizing this number like the back of your head, because like everything revolves around materiality. But for the most part, again, a lot of this is firm preference, so figure out what your senior or what your firm prefers. It's funny, even at a firm, even within office, it might change on how people like things formatted in their work papers. So whatever the case may be, make sure you format it properly to whatever your manager or senior liking or whatever your firm does. So again, I put the materiality, performance materiality, and our trivial threshold here to let me know, especially when I'm reviewing this as an audit manager, I want to make sure, hey, things are looking good. Depending on materiality, do I need to, go test more? Is the error that I noted in my testing, do I need to go maybe propose an adjustment? So again, these are just things that you continue to kind of think of as you're going through your audit test work. So I like adding materiality at the top right hand corner of my work paper. Obviously, since this is a document that is provided to us by our client, I typically also will put PBC at the top middle of my work paper to let whoever's reviewing this work paper know, hey, look, this document, although we added some documentation to it from a firm standpoint, we received this document from a client. So I put PBC, which is short for provided by client. As you grow through your audit career, you're going to start realizing that auditors have so many acronyms for literally everything. I mean, look here, PBC, ML, PM. I mean, we have acronyms for almost everything. So as you continue to progress in your career, you'll start kind of picking up the lingo. So obviously I'm going to highlight this in yellow for now because this is not done. Typically what ends up happening with a lot of the procedures in work papers, sometimes firms will have a standardized procedures as what you're going to do. Some of the smaller firms that I've even reviewed their work papers myself when I acquired a new client or whatever, or I'm taking over the audit, what ends up happening is a lot of the times you end up having to write the purpose, procedures, and conclusion yourself. My opinion, I feel like you learn a lot more that way because you actually have to write down and type and document exactly what's going on and what you're going to test. In my opinion, documentation is so critical to your career, especially as an auditor, but it obviously helps you going forward and as you continue to progress. But I think documentation is one thing that does take a little while to really get comfortable with, understand, and know what you're doing. So be patient. Documentation does come with time. I always say consider it almost a year before you start documenting stuff, because honestly, sometimes I just regurgitate certain things that just come to my head because I've been doing it so long, but documentation does take a long time. So, give yourself a little bit of grace. But in this work paper, what we're going to be doing is if I were to type this out like I did when I prepared this, to test the existence, completeness, and accuracy of the cash balance as of 12/31/2022. Perfectly fine. That is the purpose of this work paper. So whoever's reviewing this, whether it's a manager, a partner, or whoever is, can look at this and say, okay, the purpose of this work paper, they're going to test the existence, completeness, and accuracy of cash as of 12/31/2022. Perfect. In our procedures, we would then write down exactly what we're doing. So once we go through the actual test work, that's when we write down our procedures. And the easiest way for me to tell you guys how to get comfortable with writing your procedures is start thinking and analyzing, hey, what type of things did I do? And literally write them out. Like, just write out what exactly you're doing when you're testing a certain account balance. And that's the easiest way to write down and start thinking about your documentation. Again, we'll come back to this once we actually start going through our test work, but we already know the purpose of this work paper. Now let's come back to the procedures once we've gone through it. Another thing too, want to make sure you want to make sure that you start numbering the tabs that you're working on. So the quick shortcut, Alt-H-O-R, that's going to give you the access to be able to edit a tab. So again, let's do that. That's going to be tab 1, our leave schedule, Alt-H-O-R, tab 2, and then trial balance, Alt-H-O-R is going to be tab 3. Beautiful. All right. These are obviously these are kind of going to be included, but for now, all we have for the purpose of our example and our review of this bank reconciliation is going to be our bank rec, the lead schedule, and the trial balance. Before we actually dive into it, one thing that a lot of firms will have is they call it an APS form, or audit performing steps form, whereby it's literally a form that I'm pretty sure every firm that I've even looked at their work papers has some type of form whereby it gives you a step-by-step direction as to what you need to do for the certain account balance. So for cash, for example, they'll give you a list of audit steps that from a firm standpoint, they feel need to be done on certain material balances. So that's a form that definitely start reading that form before you dive into your testing, just to make sure you're covering all your bases and you're not missing any critical audit step that needs to be performed. So again, first thing you do when you get it, you format your work paper. Second thing, you read and review your APS form or audit performing steps or whatever form that your firm has for the certain account balance that you're testing, just to make sure that you're covering everything they need from an audit standpoint, to make sure you cover all your bases and you didn't miss a testing step that you're gonna have to go back and do once the review process begins. So just make sure you also do that. All right, so let's now start kind of diving into the bank reconciliation and kind of what makes up a bank rec. So we can see here that there's 4 GL account balances that make up their total cash balance on hand. So, okay, that's fine. And as we can see here, they have 3 different bank accounts. Typically, bank accounts, they'll all kind of either start off with the same number and then they'll end, the last like 4 or 5 digits will be different. As for example here, they all start with 3333 and then they 748273 is their depository account. 756042 is our checking account, and then 002289 is our AP disbursement account. So typically depository accounts, that's when they receive cash from their customers, and then that'll go into this account. Their checking account can be used to purchase different things, and then their AP disbursement, typically in my experience, I've seen AP disbursement accounts are used for paying vendors or certain suppliers for services provided, or if they buy inventory with this account or whatever the case may be. So currency, this is a domestic company, so they are all in USD. Okay, so now that we know there's 4 different GL accounts that make up the total cash balance that we're testing, the company has 3 separate bank accounts, and they essentially have a depository account, a checking account, and an AP disbursement account. Okay, great. So now, again, another critical step, and step number 3 that's really critical when you're reviewing any single work paper. And this is funny that one of the partners that I work for so long and has been my mentor forever taught me this day one, is that you always, I don't care what you're testing, you want to make sure that you agree your client's detail to the balance on the trial balance that you're testing. And let me give you a perfect example of this. So they gave us a bank reconciliation here, right? That's supposed to represent their total cash on hand. Okay. So as we can see from our lead schedule, and lead schedules are going to be in your audit files, and lead schedules are essentially a summary of an extraction of the trial balance just for a certain subsection of whatever account balance you're testing. For example, if you go to any audit file that you're gonna have a cash lead sheet, an accounts receivable lead sheet, an AP lead sheet, accrued expense listing lead sheet. You're gonna have a bunch of different lead sheets. So for our example, obviously, if we had a full audit file, we would have our cash lead sheet in our cash section that we're testing right now. So now this cash lead sheet is essentially an extraction from the complete trial balance. And I'll show you guys a perfect example of this. As you guys can see here, cash is 88,000 and our lead sheet here is 88,085. So essentially it's just an extraction of the trial balance, and it's just a certain subsection of the trial balance for the account balance that we're testing. So we're gonna tie everything back to our lead sheet here. So we always need to make sure, and again, the first thing you're gonna do whenever you get any client detail for that, let's say we're testing cash, so this bank reconciliation needs to tie to the lead sheet. If it doesn't tie, and by tie, I mean agree. Like again, this audit lingo, you'll start picking it up eventually, but it's gonna take some time. So always link your work papers. So if I'm gonna take a number from a separate tab, you wanna make sure you link it. And what I mean by link it, you're gonna hit the plus or equals. I like hitting plus. I just gotten used to that. You hit plus, equals this cash balance, because we're going to pull that from our lead sheet. Enter, and as you can see here, now the cell is linked. So if you hit this control open bracket, you actually go to that cell. It's such a good step, especially when you have your managers and certain people reviewing your work. You want to be able to make their review as easy as possible, just to get at least amount of questions. So if you hit control open bracket, you go directly to the cell that it's linked to. So it's really helpful, and believe me when I tell you, you're gonna be a rock star if you start linking all of your work papers. Do not hard code any of your work papers. It's just a lot easier for someone who's reviewing it to be able to understand where all the numbers are coming from. Even let's just say they don't know the awesome shortcut that I just showed you guys. They at least know, hey, they're linking this 88,805 to tab 2 lead sheet D10. So if we go tab 2, lead sheet D10, okay, they're pulling it from the lead sheet. Great. Okay, so now that we have this number here, we need to add documentation. Cash lead sheet, okay, cash lead sheet. We're going to go ahead and italicize that. This is coming from tab 2. This is to let the reviewer know, hey, this is coming from tab 2, and this is a total cash lead sheet. Okay, so now that we're gonna be able to tie this out. So now we're gonna add, we're gonna do all HBP, and we're gonna add a line on the bottom of our number, on the bottom of our total cash amount, and we're gonna take the difference between what's on the bank reconciliation and what's on the cash lead sheet. So let's do this. So as we can see here, this is our difference. So we're gonna go ahead and document difference, okay? And then our difference is $1,100. Our trivial threshold is $1,500. With the trivial threshold, essentially what that means is that any difference below this amount is immaterial. We don't mind, we're comfortable living with this difference. And as you can see here, our difference is $1,146 or $1,100. So we're okay. It's below our trivial threshold. We don't really need to do anything over this balance. So now at least we know that our bank reconciliation to this point at least agrees to the cash lead sheet, which is again a subsection of the trial balance. So we know that we're comfortable with this difference for now. So all we need to do is say immaterial, and now we are okay living with this difference. So now we know, hey, the bank reconciliation agrees to the cash lead sheet. Now let's get comfortable over the numbers that are in a cash lead sheet. Regardless of what you're testing, you need to, at the end of the day, you're gonna have a balance that agrees back to the lead sheet. Well, hopefully that's step one, right? But now we need to now test the underlying data that's in this lead sheet. So let's go actually now over the intricacies of a bank reconciliation and how they arrive at the ending general ledger balance that agrees to the trial balance. So now that we go back to our bank reconciliation here, we can see that the company has petty cash of $500. So they have a depository account of $22,000, a checking account of $35,000, and the AP disbursement account of $36,000. So as we can see here, the first step we know we're probably going to need to do when you audit cash is you need to confirm, since this balance is at the bank as of 12/31/2022, or your year end, or whatever fiscal year end you're testing, this balance here, this is the beginning balance. Again, you need to remember that somehow they're arriving at column J at their ending GL balance. But how they got to the GL balance is what you need to get comfortable with. So when you're testing cash, the bank balance, you need to confirm this amount directly with the bank. And the amounts that we need to confirm with the bank, $22,000, $35,000, $36,000. All of these balances, as you can see here, are above our performance materiality of $21,000. Since all these balances are above our performance materiality, there's no way we can get away with not testing it. So we know for sure that we need to, and then we can add in our work paper here, to send bank confirmations. So we know for now that, and let's add a yellow highlight in there. Typically yellow highlights let whoever's reviewing the work paper know. Let's say you're not completely done with the work paper, but you sign off on it. It lets whoever's reviewing it know, hey, there's still some other procedures we need to do. So, this is still open as of now. So now we know, hey, our bank balances are this much as of fiscal year end. we're going to need to confirm these balances. So now, anytime whether you have a reconciliation or what we call a roll forward, anytime the roll forward data to get from point A, our bank balance, which we're now going to confirm, and we know which ones we're going to confirm. And again, we're only going to confirm these three because petty cash is only $500. It's below our trivial threshold. So we're going to pass on it. It's immaterial. We don't even need to worry about that thing. Okay. Again, you need to be able to be efficient and accurate with your audit work. Even if this whole balance of 500 is wrong, we're okay with it. It's okay. So again, we're not going to test any balance that's below our trivial threshold. So we're going to pass on that. So let's highlight the amounts that we're going to send in yellow. We're going to go ahead and request bank confirmations for these amounts. Okay. So now the second part that's part of a bank reconciliation is deposits in transit. And before I actually get into that, let's just go high level overview what a bank reconciliation consists of. So all a bank reconciliation is trying to do is trying to get from the year-end cash balance on the bank at fiscal year end and somehow arrive from a cash to an accrual basis as of whatever fiscal year end you have. You start with the bank, you add any deposits in transit less any outstanding checks, plus or minus any reconciling items to get to your ending GL balance. Again, I'm going to go over that one more time. This is as simple as a bank rec gets. You have your bank balance, you add your deposits in transit, you subtract your outstanding checks, you plus or minus any reconciling items, and hopefully your client doesn't have very many, to get to your ending GL balance. Again, bank balance, you confirm, plus deposits in transit, less outstanding checks, plus or minus any miscellaneous reconciling items to get to your ending GL balance. The sum of those three numbers is your ending GL balance on an accrual basis as of whatever fiscal year end you have. So let's get actually into what a deposit in transit is. So we already went over the bank balance. You already know, I'm sure as you all have bank accounts, this is your ending cash balance at a certain point in time. This is typically going to be on your fiscal year end if you're auditing a company. For example, our example is 12/31/2022. So this is their cash balances in their bank as of 12/31/2022. So now deposits in transit. Why are they adding deposits in transit? Again, this, as you can see here, the ending GL balance is just the sum of the bank balance plus deposits in transit, less outstanding checks, plus or minus miscellaneous reconciling items equals your ending GL balance. Well, why are they adding deposits in transit? So deposits in transit, what these items are essentially deposits that were sent prior to 12/31/2022 that haven't hit our bank. Again, bank balance, the bank knows exactly what amounts they have, but they don't know what they don't know, right? Let's say one of our customers, for example, send us a cash amount for the $21,663 that we're saying here. We're adding that to our accrual cash balance because we're saying, hey, one of our customers, although it has not been reflected in our bank balance yet, we know they sent us a check on the last day of the year on 12/31/2022 for $21,663. Again, this could be made up of a bunch of different customers or one customer, but the company is adding this to their GL balance because it was sent prior to the cutoff date, which is in our example, 12/31/2022. So they're adding it to their cash balance. So although it hasn't been reflected in their bank, they're increasing their assets by $21,663 because the money's rightfully theirs. Although it's still in transit and it hasn't hit their bank, they're still reflecting it on an accrual basis in their cash account. That's why they're adding the $22,000 that's in the bank plus the deposits in transit to get to their ending GL balance. So now that we know, again, with any reconciliation or roll forward that you have, any item that's adding to a certain number to get to your GL balance, any item that's material within the reconciliation or roll forward, you're going to test. So for example, they're saying they have deposits in transit of $21,663. This amount is above our peak performance materiality. We have to test this balance. So our client, for whatever reason, they haven't given us a deposits in transit listing. So we need, and as you can see here, This is a hard-coded number. Anytime you're auditing a company and they hard-code numbers, I automatically assume something is going on or something's weird. Again, number one practice I want you guys to get from this work paper is that you need to link all of your work papers. So I would ideally like this number with a plus and then link to whatever tab the detail of the deposits in transit listing is on. We don't have that yet in our analysis. You can see here it's still yellow, which means we still need it. So in here, what we would do is request deposit in transit listing from client. So we know we need to do that. Okay, so let's do that there. Let's add the little plus there. Okay, so we know we need to send bank confirmations for the bank balance. We're gonna request the deposit in transit listing from your client. And what I mean by listing is that this $21,663 is made up of, as you can see here, they're adding all these numbers. It's made up of a bunch of different numbers. So I want to see what makes up this deposit in transit listing. And in the second part of this video, we're going to go over actually how to get comfortable with deposits in transit and how to test them. But for now, what we need to know is, hey, this balance is above what I can get comfortable with not testing since it's above our performance materiality. So we need to request the listing from our client to actually test the underlying data that makes up this deposit in transit. So now let's go to this. Let's now go to the third part of this roll forward or this bank reconciliation, outstanding checks. So from our beginning example, again, our beginning bank balance, which we're going to confirm if material, plus deposits in transit, less outstanding checks, and again, they are subtracting outstanding checks. It's just the sum of these numbers. Why are they subtracting outstanding checks on our bank reconciliation? Because these are checks that we cut that have not cleared the bank yet. So what's going on is that although they're still in our bank, whoever we sent the check to, they haven't cashed it yet. So it hasn't cleared our bank. So that's why it's still being included in our bank balance. But to go from cash to accrual, we need to make sure that the check actually clears the bank. This check has not cleared the bank yet. That's why we're subtracting it from our cash balance to end up on an accrual basis for GAAP. So therefore, our client is saying somehow they hard-coded their outstanding check here to say that their total outstanding checks are $29,802. The risk with testing any asset balance is the fact that it's overstated. So how do I know that this outstanding check shouldn't be, I don't know, 40,000 or 50,000 or 60 or 70 or 100 or whatever the case may be? That's where you need to come in as an auditor and make sure that that number that they're representing in outstanding check is accurate. Also with deposits in transit, how do we know this actual number is 21,000? Should it be 5,000? Are they incorrectly overstating their assets? That's things you need to start getting comfortable with. And again, since this outstanding check is above our performance materiality and it's not a number we could just get comfortable with saying, hey, that number's okay, we're going to need to request, so we're going to add another comment here, request outstanding check listing from client. So we know now after doing our initial review that we're going to need to request bank confirmations, the deposit in transit listing from our client as they didn't provide it yet for whatever reason, and our outstanding checks are now also, we need to test that number because we need to get comfortable with it. So now we know, hey, the sum of our bank rec, which again is our bank balance plus deposits in transit, less outstanding checks, plus or minus any reconciling items. And thank God they don't have reconciling items, because anytime you have reconciling items to a summary, a bank reconciliation, a roll forward, typically, I don't know, I feel like sometimes those miscellaneous reconciliations can be inaccurate or wrong. I'm not saying that they're always wrong, but typically I find a lot of things inaccurate with these miscellaneous items. So the sum of these numbers equal 86,939. And again, from our step one, we know that the first thing you're going to do anytime you receive a client schedule that's supposed to tie back to the trial balance or lead sheet, you're going to tie it out first. Because let's say, for example, this bank reconciliation was like $100,000. I'm just going to plug this number in. Let's say it was $100,000. And our bank rec that we're testing is already off by 11,000, which is way above our trivial threshold. We already know something's wrong with this bank rec. So I would right there and then, if it doesn't directly tie, or if the subsidiary ledger or bank rec or AR agent or whatever account balance you're testing, if it doesn't tie directly to the lead sheet or trial balance as your step one, that's when you know right away you need to go talk to your client and let them know, hey, this schedule that you provided, it doesn't even tie to my trial balance. Maybe you need to go back and figure out what's going on or what's wrong with it, because you're essentially testing bad data. And there's probably, I've had this happen to me where literally I had it happen to me in my experience where I tested something and I didn't tie it out beforehand and they were still doing some adjustments. So I ended up wasting so much time on something that completely changed. So always, again, make sure that your schedule, your roll forward, or your bank reconciliation agrees to the cash lead sheet. So at least you know, hey, the trial balance, what I'm testing is the information that they presented thus far. Whether it's accurate or not, you're going to determine that through your test work. But now at least we know, hey, we review this bank reconciliation. We're going to need to send bank confirmations because obviously the cash balance on hand as of 12/31/2022 is very material. The deposits in transit are more material than we can not get over not testing. So they're over performance materiality. We need to test it. Outstanding checks are obviously above 21,000 also. And finally, our ending GL balance, we added documentation here to make sure that it ties directly back to our lead sheet. The last thing we're going to do with this work paper, you always want to make sure you cross-reference certain items. And by cross-reference, I mean that you add a reference wherever it's coming from and wherever it's going to. For example, here, we want to make sure that we write down, hey, tab 1 is where we're testing all these account balances. So let's just add that here. And again, just to let you guys know what I did, I typed in tab 1, I hit Control C, I hit Shift, and then I hit Control V. So again, let's do that one more time. So I hit Control C, I hit Shift, down arrow, Control V. That's going to apply that to all the cells. So whoever's reviewing it now knows, hey, when they go review my lead sheet, they know exactly, they're going to go to tab 1 of this work paper to know exactly where I'm testing these balances. As you can see here, 88085, 88085, perfect. That's how you know exactly what you're going to be testing. So now that we reviewed this work paper, we know exactly what we're going to need to do and what we need to request from our client. In order to get comfortable with any account balance you're testing, you need to perform certain testing procedures to make sure the numbers you're presented by your client are accurate. In the second part of this video, we'll actually get into how to test and prepare bank confirmations, how to review, analyze, and test deposits in transit, and lastly, we'll get into how to get comfortable and test outstanding checks. Hopefully from this video, you now know how to prepare and set up a work paper, how to review and analyze a bank reconciliation, and things to start looking out for when you're beginning your testing procedures. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for the video today. If you found value in this video, please make sure to smash the like button below for the YouTube algorithm. And if you're having trouble with any accounting or audit topics, please leave me a comment below and I will definitely make a future video on it. And you guys know what it is. Until next time, work hard, dress well, peace.